Last time on Final Fantasy II, we finally managed to kill the Emperor. However, the Dark Knight revealed himself to be Vance all along, much to everyone's surprise, and is now regrouping the Palamecian army to attack Finn. So we gotta go right to his castle and take him out once and for all. Unfortunately, even though he is our former friend, even though we knew him from a single battle where he said nothing and got killed. Now, right off the bat, we've got a recolor of the Wood Golems. Now, Golem enemies can get pretty tough. Wood Golems were easy because they were very weak to fire, and their attack power wasn't amazing. But these guys get better defensively, and they're doing more and more damage. And as I'm sure you can imagine, there are more recolors of these guys, and they get even tougher. Actually, I probably shouldn't be taking this guy out first because, of course, vampire girls are undead, and as such, Rickard is gonna be, well... I do want to kill the Stone Golem first, but yeah, that happens. Again, it does help HP and stamina growth. Of course, then again, I think I could attack Rickard and, like, basically nothing would happen. Sometimes he gets some lower HP, I think, but usually his HP just stays exactly the same, so if you want to waste a turn, use a Blood Sword on yourself. Well, anyway, that's over and done with, so let's proceed on... damn it. So yes, the Emperor, the former Emperor, Mattius Palamecia, actually placed a trapdoor on the top of his castle, you know, the only way to enter, so that nobody could assassinate him, because they would just fall right to the bottom floor. And now, I'm not the biggest fan of thin hallways. I mean, this is a very linear dungeon, definitely not one of my favorite. It's just narrow hallways all the time, but it does kind of make sense in Palamecia Castle. I mean, basically, you drop intruders down to the first floor, and look at all these thin hallways. Just imagine all the soldiers just pouring through and just stabbing you. You'd really have nowhere to move. Of course, that's not actually applicable here because, you know, random battle, we don't actually fight, we don't really care about how much space we have, so it means nothing in the end, but still, it's a neat idea. Devil's Bloom we've seen before, skulls are new, but despite the fact that they're undead, they're actually kind of terrible. Like, I don't think they have much other than their basic attack. Okay, they do have stun. Do they have anything else other than stun? Actually, yeah, they do have Blizzard and Toad. Toad is probably the most effective thing they have because it can prevent you from fighting really all that well. But they're very weak undead enemies, which doesn't really make sense, because by this point in the game, undead enemies are probably the tougher ones out of, you know, all the monsters we can fight. Anyway, yes, basically we're just going to be hunting around for treasure. Again, very linear. We're aiming for the 7th floor, which, of course, we were at before, but we couldn't actually get to the throne room from there. So we just gotta keep going on. Very thin hallways. Yeah, I gotta admit, after all this time, Castle Palamecia is just, I don't know. I mean, again, it's a decent tile set, but I'm just not the biggest fan of the area, I guess. And again, I'm pretty sure it's just due to the thin hallways. Of course, it could also be due to the fact that the enemies here are really weak. I mean, at least the Emperor himself got recolored. It hasn't even been an entire dungeon since we've fought the Emperor, and he's already been recolored. I believe he has Blink, Wall, Slow, Thunder, and Haste. I think he's also able to use an elixir? You'd think that would damage him given he is undead, but, could use the garlic, but fuck it, I want to use an Antarctic Wind, because why the hell not? But yeah, his stats are actually better than the Emperor's, except I think he has the same HP. But overall they are better, so his ghost is more powerful than he was, although his magic is less effective, so I guess that is kind of a downgrade? Even though, I don't know, part of the downside to the original Emperor, and, you know, not this dead one here, was the fact that, you know, he did have buffs, so that did kind of distract him from actually attacking and being effective. Plus, he only used buffs on himself and not his guards, so that really wasn't all that helpful, really. Oh well, I guess we don't have to worry about that. So yeah, that was the Imperial Shadow, but anyway, as I was saying, enemies here, not really that impressive. The enemies in the previous dungeon at least tried to be good, but the ones here are honestly kinda weak. Can't really think of any ones that are all that interesting, really. Like, I think a couple of ones that are effective are like, I think the General's Return, those are the blue soldier recolors, but even then they're not that good, in all honesty. Trying to think of something else. Oh, actually, there are some interesting enemies, but they're actually kind of rare, so I don't know if we're going to run into them. They are recolors of the Royal Guards. You might be able to guess what they are as such. I don't want to spoil what they are just in case I do run into them. They're not too tough overall, but they are probably the toughest enemies in this dungeon, sadly enough. I mean, that's compared to basically everything else. I mean, the only other thing that I can think of that would be all that tough would be the stone golems. Lamia Queens and Corels really aren't that bad. Lamia Queens, by this point, really not too tough. Corels are kind of interesting. The most dangerous thing about them is that their physical attack can actually inflict death. So that is actually pretty tough. However, they also have the move Blaster, which is completely useless because it rarely works. It can cause paralysis to the entire party, but again, it has to work to do that. So yeah, you don't really have to worry about those guys that much, they're not too bad. Again, the stone golems are probably some of the tougher common enemies here, but they're not as bad as later versions of the enemy, so really don't have to worry that much about them. There are a couple of door paths here, and I'm sure I've made my feelings on these clear by now because I don't like them. Ooh, but we do get 3 elixirs, because we're kind of misled by the first few dungeons to not go into doors, though. Honestly, by this point, I don't think the player cares either way. It's just, oh look, a door, maybe I should go in it. Oh look, I got items, or oh look, it's a room, who cares, I'm just gonna leave. So yeah, it's a little bit of back and forth like the previous few dungeons in order to get some good items. They're decent items. Sunblade, I think, is probably one of the better things we got. Well, okay, we got 3 elixirs. That was good, but Sunblade is also decent, but you can skip out on that. It's not that amazing. So, we're actually on the 6th floor, meaning we're almost done with this dungeon. Yeah, that was pretty quick, right? Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to see... Yeah, we're on the 8th floor, so unfortunately I don't think we're going to see those last enemies. Yeah, it doesn't seem like it. The last enemies we can encounter are the Black Knights from the beginning of the game, and I believe they actually get some pretty good critical hits, even though they don't actually have the bestest stats, but they can be pretty tough, but yeah. Other than that, kind of a disappointing dungeon, but next time, we're going to take on Vance.